All right. So, so I played a 6 round tournament. And I got really into it, and like this thing started happening again where all night long I'm calculating variations while I'm trying to sleep. And yeah, like I wake up in the morning, I've just like calculated all these variations. It was like crazy, just like taking over my brain, and it felt like weird, like I wasn't as asleep as I normally would be. Um, and I've been calculating this game from last night. I've been calculating it like all night. And I've been like raring to get at it and have a look. So this is well, I'm gonna play through the game real fast for you, just to show you the game, and then I'm gonna sort of like start analyzing it. And I'll show you where I take it from there to try and analyze it. For the results oriented, my tournament was 6 rounds. I had 3 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. It was the U.S. Amateur Team West, and I played on board one, and I played like four players, 4 strong masters, like about my level or higher, and two much lower players. Okay, so anyway, let's click through this pretty quick. I'm black in this game. Um, nice. You were just at the U.S. Amateur Team as well. Sorry, I put the names in, but I took them away. For anyone who drops in late, this way they'll know who's who. Okay, so I'm black this game. I have not yet seen Magnus in The Simpsons. I'm looking forward to it. I was at a chess tournament, Borkro. When you're at a chess tournament, you don't care about anything else, not even what Magnus is doing or, So or MDL. It's like, whatever, dude. I've got my own game to play. Can I flip the board? I can, but I, I, I'm happy like this. Okay, so here he played like some prepared variation against me that I hadn't seen before. Um, I'm I'm probably defending. I'm black. um, yeah. Here I'm not defending anymore. By the way, my position's pretty good at this point. F2 and G5 are just as bad targets as my own weak pawn structure. And temporarily his knights aren't very good, so I'm doing okay. At least my bishop's attacking a pawn. This like bad bishop is the only one of the 4 minor pieces doing anything. The other 3 pieces are like abysmal stupid right now, just unfocused, not attacking or defending anything of importance. So I'm aiming my heavy pieces at like F2 and G5. At some point I'm going to double on the F file. Or on the G file, and it's hard for him to defend both pawns against that. So he swings back to the weaknesses over here with his queen. Cover this. Trades, which I'm pretty sure was clever at that moment. So he gets rid of the kingside pawns by sacking 1 pawn, but I've got a doubled pawn, and it doesn't look easily winnable for black. But I hang on to my extra pawn for the moment. Obviously, I'm in the driver's seat here, but I have like a weak pawn structure. I had no idea if I could play for a win or if it would just be a draw, but I was gonna try. He comes here, attacking 2 pawns. I can get back some pawns, so it's gonna be a pawn trade. I took this one. I was thinking maybe playing e4 when I did this. Yep, got a new mouse. All right, now I took this pawn. He checks me over here. Knight b2. Oh, the last moves of this game are missing. Okay, hang on. I played check here. Queen b6. Check here. Check here. 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 Check. Here. Check. Here. And the dramatic surprise conclusion to the game is that black loses because of checkmate. Bet you didn't think this was the game I lost. So, all right. So, what to look at in this game? Obviously, to tackle this whole game, this game is like a behemoth, right? Because it's got an opening I didn't know that immediately led to an unusual configuration and pawn structure. So an opening that I don't know that I need to sort of like figure out was it good or bad for him. It's got a middle game, which was kind of weird because I had to like deal with this knight c5 threat coming after e6, and it really like controlled my options. So I wasn't sure how to start off this middle game. He had potential play on the h file, which he then never used. So one thing for me to go back and check is whether or not HG, rook h6 would have been a good approach for him or not in the game compared to what he did do. Obviously, there's like a bunch of tactics here where he can take on b6, take on c5, or, you know, play knight c5. But he backs off. Then here, I finally have a choice, and I have to come up with a plan. I could look at some different plans compared to what I did. And then this whole position, there's a bunch of different options for white or for black. You know, about when he trades on g6, or if he should play h6, or when he can play f4. So all of this, there's like latitude in this whole middle game to try out a few different variations that I thought about during the game. And then here he plays f4, and I'm pretty confident I did the best I could here by just winning one pawn and letting him liquidate the king side. I could reinvestigate whether or not it was a good idea to trade this bishop or keep it. I didn't especially want to trade my rooks, but I felt like my bishop would be kind of bad if we start fighting on the king side after knight d3. So I felt like I needed to trade off my bishop, and finally that led me to make this choice. Now this position here, I have like no idea how to play it, so I could look into how to play this position. And now this was like my major decision. It was move 40. It was time control. And I had 26 minutes on the clock, and I used 25 of those 26 minutes to make this decision. And then I didn't have that much time later in the game to play out the end game, which, as you saw, I eventually blundered. And this was the last round of the tournament, so fatigue was definitely an issue. Where I like used all my time, and we were like the last game still going in the tournament hall after 1 million hours and six games in 3 days. And definitely fatigue played an issue. So there's a question of whether in this position here, I should have maybe made my decision faster and saved time and not tired myself out. Because there's a very, very difficult decision here for black between whether to give white b4 or e6, right? I could defend either one, and whether to take a5 or e4. It's a very, very important decision. And it might take me like an hour just to figure out what the best move for black was here. That said, sometimes, even if it's a critical decision, I might be better off just making the wrong decision, playing one of these positions randomly, because they're all going to be knight, queen, and 4 pawns against knight, queen, and 3 pawns, right? Just pick one of them, play it after like 3 or 4 minutes if you haven't figured out a clear reason why one is better than the other, and then have time on your clock later on so that you can deal with whatever position comes up and you won't blunder. So there's definitely a time management factor here, and like energy management, where perhaps I wasted too much energy on a really difficult question. But it's definitely the kind of question that I want to waste a lot of time on in analysis at home. And then this position here, I could check on e4 again. I thought that it wasn't that great after knight d5, and if e3, he can take on e3. So that's why I didn't go for e4. But maybe I could revisit that. So I took here. And then the other thing I want to just check is, so in this position, I already knew that knight b7 was like losing, and then I looked at some other move, and then I played knight b7. So obviously, like, knight b7 is just an obvious blunder. Here there's knight c4 coming, and there's no defense, right? If I block with the knight or the queen, either way, knight c4 is going to win. So the question is, do I have a way out of this like repetition that we were doing back and forth with the queen blocks in this? And that's the first thing I want to figure out. Like, how could I win this position? I didn't see how to get out of it. Okay? And that's the first thing I want to figure out. And the reason is, to me, perhaps the most interesting question is right here, to decide which of these endgames I should have played. But to understand which of these I should have played, I partly need to first figure out how good or bad the one I chose was. Does that make sense? So I need to first evaluate the one that I played and see if that gave me winning chances or not. And then I can go back and look at some of my other options here, right? Knight c5, knight a5, instead of queen e4. So, right, so as Shorty Source says, my other option there was kind of queen c6, queen b8, knight b7 to get out of the repetition. So that's what we're going to look at first. And then we'll eventually be able to come back to this point. That's how I would approach analyzing a game like this for myself. If you guys have seen my video about what is analysis, I've given different standards for different level of players as to like how ambitious you should be in analyzing your game, what you should expect yourself to be able to figure out or not figure out, and how hard to work on it and still enjoy it. But me personally, at my level, my like appetite for analysis is basically infinite, and there's no amount of work that's too much. So I should be expected to gradually go through every single one of these questions and solve them all. And part of that means like playing these out like again and again, So like for example, in this position right here, he could have played queen b8 check, and I have to block with my queen, and he gets one pawn back, right? And this is what I thought he was going to do. And then he plays 3 pawns against 2 with knights on the board, right? I didn't know if I could win this endgame or if it was a draw. I thought maybe I've got a better than 50% chance of winning, but I didn't know at all. And part of analyzing this game would be picking this and doing my endgame exercise with it. For those of you who don't remember or haven't seen it, the endgame exercise is to play out, an endgame like back and forth with white and black against a friend, and talk about it in between, and then play it out more till you get better and better and better at it. You guys have seen me do it with computer workout against a computer with some endgames, and basically I just don't have enough experience with knight endings to know whether or not I could win this. But my comparison point was that if this e pawn were a g pawn or an h pawn, then black's winning. That's the one thing I do know. So now this pawn is like closer, so it's still within range where the knight can like deal with it and the king can deal with it while still kind of defending their pawns, but it might be enough to stretch black's defenses. If this pawn were like a b or a c pawn and I didn't have a passed pawn, then black can just barely draw, I think. And if it's here, it's winning. So here, I don't know. I would guess winning, but not really sure. So one of the best sources, in the endgame exercise, one thing is, well, where do you get the positions that you should practice from? One of the best sources, as I said, is from your own games. And this variation here is a very good example of something which, if I had all the time in the world to be training and I were doing, 50, 60, 70 hours a week of chess, I would definitely practice this position against somebody and see if I could win it. And maybe later today, if one of you wants to practice with me, we could try and practice this position a little bit. They say knight endgames are evaluated the same as pawn endgames. Not exactly, but close. I mean, they're definitely different. I mean, for one thing, like a knight can always sack for the last pawn. So when you get down to just very, very few pawns, they're not evaluated the same. Like king and 3 pawns against king and 2 pawns is a win. But with knights on the board, the defending side can usually draw. If there are no passed pawns and they're all on the same side of the board, right? Same for like two against 1. You can usually win a king and pawn ending 2 against 1. With knights, it'll be a draw. Okay, I would appreciate that, MC. That would be nice if you're up for that. Okay, so that's so basically there's 2 positions to evaluate to decide whether or not I made the right decision here with queen takes e4, giving this pawn, right? One is this position towards the end. You know, can I get out of this perpetual attack? Can I fix my king position, my knight position? And the second one is, you know, can I win this knight ending up only 1 pawn? Okay, these are the big questions. King c5, king d4, making king active with tempo. Yeah, we'll try that plan. We'll try that plan. a6 is hanging, so first you have to play knight c6 probably, attacking their knight away, and then you try and activate your king. But there's probably a number of plans, right? Like trying to queen your pawn, trying to activate your king, trying to activate your king to go after their pawns, trying to activate your king to support the f-pawn. There's probably like a few different plans. We'll try them out and maybe see what's what, okay? But now for some basic just tactical calculationing, all right? So queen e8, queen c6, queen b8, knight b7. Yeah, D-Way, instinctively, I'm giving up my doubled pawn, and by capturing his e-pawn, I'm making my own e-pawn a passed pawn, right? At this sort of key decision moment. By giving up this, it's a doubled pawn. By capturing this, I make this a passed pawn. Versus, like, I could have played knight a5, queen e6. Let's say then I don't have a passed pawn. But do I have a weak pawn to target an attack to try and win another pawn? It's very, very, very hard decision. But it's cool that you have an instinct about it. Basically, oh yeah, and this was one of the observations I was going to make about how some of this stuff works. In some positions, I'm a master. In other positions, I'm a beginner. It depends on whether or not I've got like comps in my head, you know, comparable positions that I can fall back on. And often when I'm playing a game, like if it's kind of a position that I have mastery of, I immediately know what my 1 or 2 candidate moves are, and I know like what variation to calculate to decide which one is right or wrong in that position. But this position here that we're trying to calculate here, in this position, I'm a complete beginner. I don't know if I've ever had a queen and knight endgame. Probably 1 or 2. I don't think I've ever had a queen and knight endgame where my king was exposed. So I don't have experience with how to defend my king against perpetual checks and mating attacks from the queen and knight with my own queen and knight. And that's partly how I blundered. It was not because I didn't calculate it. Actually, I blundered into a variation I'd already calculated and knew was losing. But I was spending so much time trying to figure out this position that I got low on time and made one of those thought process errors where you play a move that you know you shouldn't play. So yeah. Knight c5 is the other candidate, is another big candidate move on this move. There's knight c5, there's queen e4, there's knight a5. And there's also king d7 probably. So, so basically, I got into a situation where I didn't have the time and energy to calculate all the variations because I was approaching this position as basically a beginner who's pretty trained at calculating. But other than that, a beginner, I have to look at every single move here, just one move at a time and figure out what's happening with them. You know, I do not have the experience to quickly know which lines are more or less likely to be good. Okay. Yeah, I have strong calculation abilities, which I can somewhat like cross apply. But but to some extent, it's almost like approaching it as a beginner when you don't have instincts and you don't know immediately how to evaluate the different end games that come out of it. And yeah, by trying to calculate it now, I'm going to build up some experience in this position so that I'm less of a beginner next time. So on knight b7, I was thinking knight c4 from white. Now, in this position, I had looked at d5 and king c5, I was thinking. So on d5, the idea is that if knight e5, queen c2, and now his king gets super weak, which I was thinking might help me to win this position. But I remember thinking that if he played queen e5 instead of knight e5, he'd pin this pawn and get away scot-free with my passed pawn. And now if he's able to, like, you know, retreat even just knight e3 next move. Oh, sorry. Give me a second. This is important. Hello. All right, you guys catch what that was about? I left my phone in my friend's car when we played when we were playing the tournament yesterday on the way back. I was so exhausted from this game. You know, like, I mean, most of you have probably played in a tournament, right? So you know that, like, at the end of a tournament, you were so exhausted from giving your all that, like, you can't process, like, normal things, right? You can't see stuff. You don't hear what people say. You drop things on the ground and just keep walking. So yeah, so well, apparently he does have my phone, and I'll be getting that back shortly. Yep, exactly. When you're playing in tournaments, like, nothing else is on your mind. I'm just like sitting there, like, staring like this and calculating, like, queen and knight checks. You know, I was still processing this exact game here. I was like, queen, knight, king, queen, knight, king, queen. I can't figure it out. You know, just I can't evaluate it. So I think this doesn't work, right? Like, what could we do next? Like, you know, say something like queen c5. Then white can just go knight back to here. Right? And on queen c2, queen d5, knight c5, queen check, queen takes, knight takes. That's a draw. You know, not to mention he might be able to keep playing with the pieces and keep messing with me. Okay, so queen e5. Sorry, queen e5. My king can't move anywhere at all, so I can't unpin that way. I can move my knight, and he can just come back here. If queen blocks, knight d6. I just got to move a bunch of pieces, like a, you know, to sort of figure it out. Knight can block, queen here. Yeah. So this doesn't do anything, right? So d5 doesn't work, as I thought. So my other move here, so another move here is e4. Then he has knight takes d6, check. If queen takes, this I calculated in the game, and he gets this pawn off me too. And if the king comes back to defend the knight, I didn't look at this, but It didn't seem promising. Seems probable draw. Very probable draw. Try knight d6 and don't take on c7. Who do you want to play knight d6? Him? Me? Yeah, I mean, he can also just come back with the knight. You know, I've just lost a pawn and my king is still kind of tied up. This doesn't feel good. Let's see. You want to go knight c4, queen e5? Sure. Queen e5. Queen d5 is forced, then queen c7, and just repeat like this, huh? That's pretty simple. Yeah. Good call. Good call. And if king here... Oh, sorry. Queen here, queen here. If the king comes here, then checkmate. Okay, cool. Just got to learn all these things. So, yeah. So on king b6, yeah, the best pattern is just coming back to the c4 square again. The knight is super good here right now against my pieces and my king. I just get brutalized again and again. Okay, so knight b7, knight c4. So we've eliminated e4 and d5. That basically, in good time, Farhan, we got to evaluate this first before we can figure out which move is better on move 40. All right, so this is my other move to defend d6. Now, what am I even worried about? I think I may have calculated here, and then like the queen coming to g8 or f7. Like, but the queen's stuck over here temporarily. She can't really do much for a moment. And I don't think knight b6 is very good for white, actually, right? They're kind of just trapping their own pieces at this point. Here, and then check. This seems really promising for black to me, right? Like, it feels like suddenly the black pieces are getting active here. I have strong reservations about playing this way for white. I suppose I could calculate another move or two just to be sure. But black's threatening mate here. And now we come back to d4 now that the knight's not controlling d5. Oh, vicious. Vicious. All right, so finally a variation the black wins. Interesting. Okay, so let's go back to king c5. So here we are, king c5, and then the question is what to play for white here. Oh yeah, knight e3 is definitely going to be better than knight b6. Knight b6 was some terribly stupid move, you know, to play like queen a6 or something, but it doesn't. It's really, really bad. It's like obviously bad. Okay, so Borko says knight e3. Shorty Source says maybe just king b2. Okay, but maybe not even queen a7. You know, I don't even know if the queen's good coming to a7. But if she doesn't come to a7, then what's she even doing on b8, right? I mean, this king could be safe on this square unless she checks him. You know, black, if white does nothing, black's ready to now play e4. And then what? I don't even know. So maybe you could just play king b2. But let's try the checks first. Queen check, king here. Unfortunately, we just got to try every move. Knight e3, king e4. Hey, this king feels like he's not under attack anymore. This seems bad. I mean, the knight probably just has to move back, right? Right now, these pieces are discoordinated. The best you could do would maybe be to, like, move your knight back here. And then... Well, and then it's still tricky. Still tricky. What do we do next as black? Like, one thought is knight c5, but it allows queen h7, so white can keep attacking. The other option is to move the king already out of the way of queen e3 and then push e4. Or maybe bring the queen in, right? Like, you could come here, and then... Oh, but there's queen f2. King here. Okay, I'm going to try Shorty's first move. So here, check, and then you said king d4 is promising. Oh la la, your knight's covering queen d3 mate. That's lucky. It's a good point. The kind of thing that takes me a moment to see. Okay, so maybe queen aims for queen e3. All right, I'm going to come here for white. I'm threatening maybe queen d2 or knight to d6 or queen to e3. That's the idea behind this move. Queen h6. If I play e4, I think this is basically checkmate. Like, we have to sack the knight. So I can't do that. If I play d5, queen takes queen, or queen e3, mate in 1. That's the worst move on the board, I guess, d5. I guess we got to bring our queen in somewhere. So, but if we bring the queen over here to cover any of this stuff, then white gets queen d6. Does anybody see a move for me here? Because I'm not seeing anything. Knight e4? Knight e4 maybe to cover some of these squares. It covers these two squares, and the knight's defended here. Sorry, and the knight's defended, and there could be like a counterattack at some point. So then I would guess white throws the one check they have here. This knight seems really improved here from b7, doesn't it? This feels like we've got a chance. Huh. I think black has like a shot here. It's like the best thing I've seen yet. But now we have to find out if the king's ever safe from perpetuals over here, right? So let's just try some checks. I'm just gonna make a lot of moves, guys. Let's just move some pieces. Da 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 da. I still don't know what to do. It takes so many resources to defend this king. It seems like impossible to accomplish anything. And this is like the the best thing that's happened to us yet. I was thinking here that then white would play queen d5. That's why I was trying not to give white this square for the queen. But then there's knight c3. Good call. All right, so let's try queen c8. That's crucial. That's really crucial, actually, that they don't have that square. Because now, actually, we took away this square from him, too. Wow, okay, so white's reduced to this move. And let's see if we can finally do something, huh? I mean, at some point, if we can never move these pawns, if all we do is like run around in circles avoiding perpetual checks, then we're in perpetual threat of perpetual check, right? Like, so at some point I got to find a moment where I can play d5. So here, knight takes e5 gets mated by queen c2, queen c1, knight c3. Right? Not to mention that there's also queen c3, queen e5, which is a simple win. But okay, queen comes over. Oh, the risky king! I don't block with the queen. I just risky king it to a8. And what can white do? Oh. If his knight moves, then queen c2 is mate. So knight e3, sure. Now we've taken away a really good square from his knight. Like, that's a big deal. Now I think I want to reposition my knight to c3 to defend d5 and box his knight out from d5. Does that make sense? Even though it blocks my queen stuff? I mean, the other move you could consider would be queen c5. It's interesting. If you can win this endgame here, which I think it's plausible. This looks like it could be a win. But let's check here. Now he could take on b4 if we don't do something. So queen b7. I think that queen b8, queen c6, queen here, queen check, and then e5 if you don't keep going like this. So I want to go queen b7, and then if they check, I can just come here. I'm being very careful about d4 to kick the knight because it lets the knight back to c4. This is like the first sort of relative piece I've had in ages with this knight being at arm's length from my king. So I'm thinking I actually want to play e4, not d4. Or try to navigate to like start my own checkmating attack somehow. I'm very happy with this pawn on d5 at the moment. King b2, knight a4. I don't think knight a4 works, but let's see. Do you know that the queen's defending this knight? Oh yeah, if black could force the queen of trade of queens, it would be a whole different thing. Then it would be something that I know, and it would be a win. So knight c3, king b2, queen b7, check here. All right. You want to play d4. You want to play d4 here. And then knight c4, queen a4. Okay. I'll try it. I mean, one potentially worrying thing is he might be able to play queen b4 here. Calculate that here. Check. Oh, e4. Oh no. E4. You guys know this thing? That's so sick. Black wins. Black wins this. The white king can't go to d4 because of e2. It can't go to c4 because of e2. It can't go to b2 because of e2. All white can do is play b4, b5, black takes on b5, and then white resigns. It's a Zugzwang. You don't even need your king to win this game. Except that technically if you didn't have a king, right, you can't play or win. Oh, man. Okay, so we can play d4 here. They can't play queen b4. I'm pretty sure this... Yeah, I mean, if they don't take your knight, they're just losing. And e4. Oh, man. Okay. So there are... So my comment earlier about, like, time management is, like, any of these positions might be wins or draws. The question is, do you have enough time on your clock to calculate these little, like, details that come up as you're playing, right? Like, do you have time to calculate this move here when the time comes? And if you don't leave enough time on the clock, it doesn't matter if you make the right or wrong decision because you won't be able to win the position that you get. So that's why, like, earlier I needed to use less than 25 minutes to decide which pawn to trade, you know? Okay, so d4. So knight comes back to c4. Now your next plan was to play knight check, pawn takes, and take this. And now we just have to see if white has any way to do something here before black covers up. Because the pure queen ending, I'm pretty sure I can win unless white has something immediate to go for my pawns. Here. Check, and here. Black wins. Queen b4, queen b6. Trades queens and wins, right? So, queen here, queen here, queen here, queen here. Black's got this covered. Oh, d4. Okay. So, d4 in this position. How loud is the rain, by the way? Can you guys hear the rain on my microphone? I'm curious. Let me know. So otherwise the knight can go just wandering to who knows where. You can't even go to g4 because you take it. f5, take it. d1, take it. Good lord. Knight f1. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. I just wanted to know if you guys could ever hear the rain, right? Okay, so can we win this now that we've kicked his knight to the end of the world? Far away. I mean, it's going to come back to d2 and c4 at some point. Maybe queen b7 here. I'm pretty sure knight c4, queen c3, queen e1's a bad idea. There will be a perpetual at the end. So, queen to e8, queen b4. I don't really want to give up b4 here. I mean, it's so hard to know what you can or can't give up. What about knight d5? What about knight d5? All right, he can't give up c2 with check. So he comes here. I just wish I could leave my king alone for one moment to checkmate, right? But he just checks here. This has got to be a perpetual, right? Oh, it's so exhausting. These variations are like 100 moves long. Like we're on move 78 of a variation that started on move 50, right? This is 30 moves deep. And like, how am I supposed to calculate this stuff? Ah. I think black's going to get away, though. Do you guys have any predictions? I mean, because this knight is so passive right now, right? And black's got like just a ton of stuff, you know, covering squares and doing things. I almost feel like it might be a good idea to run towards this knight so we can take it at some point, but I don't know. We'll see. Check. Block with the knight, queen here. Yeah, I don't want to disimprove my knight. Come here, come here, come here. I think this is winning for black. King g3 here, right? Sort of starting to corral the white knight. Just trap it with your own king that's getting perpetualed. Love this, right? I think we're going to win. Maybe I'm miscalculating something, but I feel like a winner here for a second. Now queen f3, and I take. Oh, you're going to do this to me. No, after all my work, man. After all my work. Oh. It's not showing stalemate, but it is stalemate. Oh my goodness. Oh, I never get to win. Oh, jeez. Goodness, goodness, goodness. Okay. Back we go. Well, I have no idea where to go now, guys. Where should I send my king? I don't think this worked. I guess I got to go back some moves. Okay. All right. Try d3, comma knight d5 instead of knight d5. Like play d3 here. Oh, to try and help mate the white king. But you have to calculate this move, right? Which I'll tell you I'm not pumped about. Okay, knight d5, queen here. Let's just defend our things. Wait, we can't. Oh, I got to move here, guys. Knight b5. That defends our b pawn that way. Still planning queen c3. But maybe also knight a3. This queen on c8 is amazing somehow. It's defending the king all by itself, right? Like 100% by itself. Okay, well, the only thing to do is to try and bring the knight back to the game. You guys like that knight b5, huh? That's promising. It's promising. It's like we're learning how to move a knight, right? Yeah, I just don't even know how to move this piece. D3 looks even greater now. Urgh. I didn't finish calculating d3 out, Smiter. I'm choosing to look at this move first instead. I've got a really good feeling about this knight b5. And I'm going to play d3 now. And yeah. Because on queen c3 here, there's king c1. And on queen check, there's knight here. And again, you know, we can like box him in with knight c3 or a3 or something, but I don't know that our king is ever going to survive by himself. So instead of doing that, since I've already tried that once, I'm going to try this move now. d3. If he takes on d3, then queen a3 is checkmate. Queen c3 is checkmate. I'm like basically 1,000% sure. There's no checks, so the only move to stop queen c3 or c2 is knight c4. Now, he still has no checks or anything. I'm thinking about playing e4 to get queen h8. I could also take on c2, king c2, knight a3 check, and trade off the knight. Knight to b1? I don't know, Outsmiter. That may be the case, but I'm trying this. All right, let's try this move for a second. Here. Check. Here. Takes. Takes. Queen b7. Here. Oh, this looks like the shape of a win, guys. This looks like the shape of a win. This looks pretty darn playable. Pretty darn playable. I'm going to guess that's a win. We can't go like 100% all the way with every line. This e4 move also looks pretty promising. Like, defending that pass pawn idea, queen h8. I feel like we've really found something here. I'm feeling really good about that. D4. Remember that this depends on this variation. Can't believe it. Okay, d4. Knight c4 was losing here. Yep. So then we sent his knight to f1. Yeah, and then we were probably winning. Okay, you wanted to say that d3. I'm going to check this for your sake. Knight d1. Ah, and then just coming here. You're right. This wins super fast. If the king comes this way, queen c2 is mate. If the king avoids mate, then take here and do this. That's all she wrote. Yep, good call. So that means that the move d3 is also extremely strong right here without knight d5 or b5. Because You know, black's basically threatening to move the knight and take on c2, right? Like knight a4 or knight d1. So then you could play a move like knight e3, but then black plays d2. And switches to just queening this thing. Oh, man. I can't believe we found something. Let's go back a long ways. So basically, I tried the king c5 move now. There it is. Hey, Fart Brains, we've missed you. Yeah, if anybody in the stream is ever like confused about what's going on, just ask in chat and someone will update you on what we're doing. We're looking at my games right now from the tournament I played this past weekend. Well, my games. We're only going to look at one game today, I think. We got a couple hours, but we got a meaty one. We got a meaty one here. Much as I'd love to show you guys some of my successes, I would even rather work on this thing here. All right, so the knight b7 block, knight c4, and then the king comes out. All right, so we looked at queen a7. I don't know what else white's especially doing here. Well, what if he plays king b2? What am I doing? I can push e4. Queen f8, sure. I was thinking that move too. Stopping d5, which is black's next move otherwise. And maybe now I come back here. Trying to advance, right? I already forget why I played king c5, but you know. I guess it was because I couldn't move anything else at that point. Yeah, I really want to play d5 and take one square away from this evil knight on c4. Just get him out of my face. Ugh. This move is vicious. Nice find, shorty. Ah, I got nowhere to go, man. I got nothing. I got nothing here. I assume I can't let that knight check me. Knight d6 is double check. You know, pawn d5, there's knight e5 check, and they take my queen. Queen f1. That does it. There's nothing here for black to do but come back to c5. So let's go back here and try and find another move for black in this situation. Maybe we can just inch our way over here. And then check. If king d5, knight b6. Here. Check. Here. Grab this. Threatening knight b6. Oh no, even better is to take the b pawn. That's more valuable. Any threat to knight b6. Not promising. I'm going to go back. I'm going to say not promising. Okay, so queen f8. It's almost like I can't move. queen c7. Since I'm a slug, I'll just try moving like the tiniest possible moves. If queen f5, d5 makes progress. If queen f2, I have another square to try and hide at, right? And I've got queen b6 covered. Now I'm threatening d5. But what do I do if white's just like passing, like just like king b1? Yes, Farhan, that's absolutely what I'm saying. Move 40 is critical. But move 40, we have no way of figuring out the right move if we don't even understand one of the three branches. In other words, to make the decision on move 40, we need to know what was going on in this position, plus what was going on in the position after knight c5, plus what was going on in the position after knight takes a5. So to pick that move, we have to first do this work. That's the necessary order of work in order to ever figure anything out or conclude anything about this game. So you're absolutely right. It is critical, but the only order in which you can figure it out is this order. Knight a5. Okay, interesting. That move does something. Yeah, that moves something. Shorty, I feel like you're better at this position than me. Like you have some more like mastery. You're finding some candidate moves a lot more easily than I am. You just, yeah, you're seeing some of the options faster than me. I was thinking about knight d8, by the way. I mean, I had come up with one candidate here of knight to d8. You know, within the idea of maybe coming to f7 or maybe to c6 or something. Knight a5. I mean, a knight trade would be glorious. We'd be pumped about a knight trade. Unless we then immediately lost something. All right, I got to double check just queen to c8 here. Because this queen's on a very awkward square at the moment. Like, if king here, there's queen d8. If king here, there's queen f5. If king b5, there's queen b7 or queen c4. Yeah, this did it. I don't think check on f5 is as good, Farhan, because d5. If this also works, then good. But it looks to me like queen c8 does the trick here. Oh, but I didn't look at king d4. Oops. King d4. Check and just come here. And everything's cool. Yeah, you see, like, you see what I mean by, like, in some positions, it can take, like, 20 minutes just, like, see a candidate move, and in other positions, you just know what all the candidate moves are. It's like this dramatic difference. Instead of queen c8, queen f5. Okay, yeah, queen c8 didn't work, but I don't understand how queen f5 takes a pawn after black plays d5. I mean, it still has chances at a perpetual, but not entirely sure how it'll work. So, okay, you can also go queen check first. Yeah, Shorty. I think there's a chance at a perpetual with that line that you played with queen h8 and so forth. So, all right, well, one suggestion was queen check, king c6, and this suggestion made a lot of sense to me. So I'm going to try it now. So basically, white's trying to threaten queen takes, e4 check. And if knight takes, then they still check here, and then they take the e4 pawn, and it's a draw. So black has to try d5 now. Knight e3 attacks these two pawns, but black can play queen d6, and it's not yet clear to me. We can try queen f6. If king comes here, then check, take the queen, and take the knight. So king here. And black gets away safely. Black's safe here. Yeah, this is good enough for black. Knight a5? Huh, having trouble cracking knight a5. It seems really awkward to put the knight there. It seems like tactically something's going to fall apart. But it's holding. It's holding for the moment. Okay. So logically, white doesn't want to trade the knight. So let's play this move. You can't play d5 because of this. If the queen defends it, then queen check, pawn here, and then you can take it. So it must go along. The pawn must run. Run, run, run. Yeah, Outsmiter, there's a small chance of a perpetual there, but it's very risky for white. I mean, black's up 2 clear pawns, and I'm not convinced there's going to be a perpetual. I'm going to guess that one was not working for white. This one maybe has a better chance. Maybe. 94. We don't know, Kakaboom. We're finding out if this is a win or a draw or a loss or whatnot. All right. I don't know. Here we go. Does black win this stupid thing? Did the e-pawn get far enough? Knight g3 simpler? Oh, knight g3 here. That'll do it. Yeah, that's correct. Just pick off the e-pawn and white gets the draw. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think oddly this knight d2 move is the clearer draw, right? Just going after the e-pawn while the knight is discoordinated on a5. Okay, so maybe no knight a5. If we're in Zugzwang, we could play a5, a4 maybe. It gives our king 1 extra square on a6 in some lines. defends the B pawn in some lines. I don't know. Might be a possible move. Oh. Okay, so I'm tired again. How are you guys doing? There's something about this position that like is really, I think, saps extra energy out of me. Whew. It's tough. Tough. Let's copy what we've got so far. Okay. Hang on. So I want to go. Okay. So I need a little change of pace because I'm getting like completely exhausted. So let's practice this knight endgame here now, okay? Let's get the current fen. Okay. Now let's play. What's your name on chess.com, MC? I can't put in a starting position, can I? Checking the hill. J postuma. Okay, cool. While you log on, I will find how to do this. I know you can do it in correspondence chess because people used to set up positions where it's like mate in one and they would challenge people to like games starting from that position and then checkmate them and like take their rating points and be like ha 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 ha. That was rough. All right, I sent you a friend request. There you go, online. Cool. All right. Okay. I'm going to do five, unrated. And then we'll just play out the moves to the game, okay? So so we can get it there. Do do do. Or we can just do it without time on an analysis board. That's actually easier. So I don't know. Okay, so it's knight orf, e4, c5. I'll paste the pgn for him. There we go. All right, you guys get to see the whole thing again this way. reorient ourselves as to what's going on. I had to move the knight so that on queen g4 I'd even be able to defend this pawn on e6. All right, I'm going to give him the next set of moves. No, I don't. In the game, I mistakenly thought that queen a7 was kind of going to force him to trade queens by attacking f2 and g5, but then he slightly surprised me with this queen to g3 move. King b1 was a good move here, just getting out of some tactics on g5. And now he brings the queen back. This was a good maneuver too, but somehow I still got a slightly better position here. So here if I'd taken with the rook, he could play f4, and I can't really capture because of knight f4 hitting my rook and pawn. So by trading at this moment, he got me to take back with the h pawn and close the g file there. I could give you a more complete answer when we're not on a chess stream. Goes to Banquo. I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but I'm here to figure out this end game. Oh, sorry, did I not give you the next moves? Sorry, hang on. Let me grab it. So now it's going to be, let's see, we're at rook f7, knight takes c7, king c7, knight d3, queen d4. Yeah, I can give you like a thoughtful answer another time, but right now I'm just trying to figure this out. What did I do? Knight b7, attacking the pawn. And here's like the critical position of the game. But interestingly, I think the critical position of the game was the position where I should have realized it was beyond me and just made a move quickly and had time later. Yeah, you can ask me tomorrow on chess.com TV during the Pro Chess League. Get me in trouble with them. The tournament was 2 hours for the first 40 moves and then 30 minutes sudden death with a 5-second increment. So using up all my time on move 40 meant that I only had half an hour to play that endgame, and it was just too hard for me. Okay, queen e6, king c7, knight d3. Okay, queen d4. b3. Okay, so let me give him a couple more moves. b3, knight 5. Okay, so b3, knight a5, queen 7, queen, can we say queen d8, queen b5. All right. So this is the position that we're going to practice. So I'm going to take one shot at winning this, and then I'm going to give Joshua a chance to try and win this as black as well after I take my shots. So my choices here are either knight c6 or e4, I think. I'm going to try knight c6 first. There will be Pro Chess League all day tomorrow from like 8 a.m. Pacific until 9:30 p.m. Pacific, like 13, 14 hours. My shift is from about 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is the Pacific Division. All right, now, excuse me, guys, while I concentrate for 10 minutes on this endgame here. If you got any brilliant questions, just hold on to them so that I can just pay attention and answer them in a few minutes. I think if he goes to f2, e3 wins. Pretty much. Well, I guess he could come back to d3 and... All right, yeah, that's what I thought. Knight to f4. And... Okay. Yeah, c3 is a good move. Everything else was no good. King d4 was really strong for black if he allowed it. I felt like I was getting close to winning. All right, I don't really see much else. I'm going to bring my king around, I guess. The king just needs to get active. I don't see a way through here without trading pawns, so I'm going to try and aim my king to the f-file. And see if I can achieve anything with that. And at some point, if our kings are both over here, then at some point, because he played this to take away squares, at some point I can play knight a5, make him play b4, and then come into c4 with my knight, maybe. It's an extra option I have now. Looks like maybe he's going to try and wall me off with his knight and keep his king covering the b pawn. Let's just see how far I can go over here. He does have me kind of cut off. This is a long way to go to try and get in. Yeah, now he has knight d4 against knight a5. You're right. Man, Shorty, are you like a GM or are you just really good at knights? What the heck, dude? What is up with that? All right, I'm going to try something very risky. I'm trading a pawn, but it gets me some pretty serious progress as well with my pawn. Like, I'm basically, you know, I trap his knight on c1 by doing this. Get my pawn to e3 and king to e4. And if it turns out I can win with just this pawn trade, then it really helps clarify what I need to achieve to win this endgame. Okay, so now if I play e3, is king d3 annoying? Yeah. So I think just want to come. I just want to come forward with my king here. I mean, he's not in good. His pieces are not in good shape right now. I just want to play king f3, king f2. Like in yesterday's game, I'm out of time and struggling. I think White's got to draw pretty. I think White's got to draw now. Okay. Oh, shoot. All right. That was awesome. Great game. Very close. All right. Acceptu. All right. Now find out if you can memorize the game one time. What moves? He'd probably get like 95% of it right if he just did it by memory. But then when you get one move wrong, it totally messes up what we're actually trying to do. So yeah, so I'll just use the moves for now. That was pretty close, huh? That endgame was like so close to a win, so close to a draw. Okay, let me go get him some more moves. I don't know if it was a good idea for white to like trade the rooks, but he basically basically went towards a rook trade himself with this rook g8 move. Is my favorite player Wesley So? All right, now we'll see if Joshua wants to go knight c6 or e4 or some other move I haven't considered. Is my favorite player Wesley So? Not really. I mean, my favorite player, it's like maybe myself, maybe Gary Kasparov. Depends by what criterion. Like the greatest players are Carlsen and Kasparov and Fischer and So. Okay, knight c6. That's what I played. Okay. All right, I'm gonna focus again. Must defend this draw. I agree with this. Sultan Khan was good too, yeah. I guess favorite maybe is like whose chess style do you like best, right? Like not who's like the nicest guy who plays chess, but whose style do you like? I don't know. I didn't really consider knight a2. I do enjoy playing other variants. Especially if you consider Fischer Random a variant. Fischer Random's my favorite kind of chess. And chess is my second favorite. And then I also know how to play Bug House and Crazy House. Man, this position feels hard to defend. In the chat, Josh was saying, he just said, I thought everything you did was right, so I'm just going to copy you. But I did only get a draw. I'm sure he'll try something different at some point. And I wrote back, apparently I think the same thing of what you did, because I'm using his same defense with c3 to try and keep the black king out, you know, at least force him to take the long route. King d6, king d2, king e5, king e3, knight a5. Yeah. King d6, king d2, king e5, king e3, knight a5. And then b4, knight c4 loses my knight on f4. c4, d4 loses, knight g6. Oh, he did go for d4 right away, huh? What do you know? So he's... I mean, I'm going to trade that. You only got so many options. Got to trade pawns. Actually, wait, knight e6? Yeah, I'm going to go for it. Oh yeah, I miscalculated this. Shoot. Oops. Yep. Alright, hang on. This does not look like something I can recover from, but let's try anyway. That was a major mistake. Yeah, the knight trade on d4 actually loses because black plays king d5, you play king c3, and then a5, and you're in Zugzwang. Yeah. I didn't double check the game pawn ending. All right. Now what? Oh man, it would take a while just to master this simple knight endgame too for me. We'll see how Joshua feels after the game. We can ask him if he feels like this is easy to play or something where he'd have some work to do. If he didn't have the pawn on a6, it would be a draw. Knight a5 to c4 is definitely an interesting idea here, Sheppy. Yeah, you could try that. Oh, I think that might be a great move, actually. I would resign if he had a pawn on h2. Adding or subtracting a pawn is pretty decisive at this point. A5 is great, gaining some space. I wish I'd had time to play A5 at some point in my game as black. Just going to back his king up a moment. We've got a 5-second increment, and we had like 5 or 6 minutes when we got to the end game. The knight on b7 seems to be a good square for the knight. I feel like I'm not really losing here. All right, GG. So I hope Joshua shares some thoughts in the chat room. So the way this exercise worked, if we had tons of time for it, is Joshua and I would now each say like what we thought of the position, you know, and which game, you know, if we liked what white did or what black did, if we thought we could win or draw or whatever. And you know, we would sort of like discuss a little bit, and then we would repeat and play another pair of games. Instead of a5. Right, so Sheppy had the idea of playing knight a5 here. But I wasn't going to play b4, knight a5. I was going to play pawn takes here, Sheppy. Then what would you have done? You're thinking that the endgame might be a draw. I feel like once we trade one pair of pawns, even though black gains space off of it, I do feel like that might make it a draw once there's the pawn trade. Because I think we both like really pressed it pretty well for black. And got the pawn pretty close. And it was like inches from a win. Inches from a win, and just not quite enough. The possibilities for white to sack the knight off on the a pawn and draw are yeah. It feels like we couldn't quite win. So I think if we were to try playing this out a couple more times, I would suggest that we try without the move d4 for white and see if we can press it without ever playing that. Because there's probably some other plans available, you know, like if you consider like one of these positions here, king c2, right? Like you can move the king to e5 and the white king comes over here. You can play a5, then you can try and maneuver your knight to c5 to attack the b pawn, maybe with the idea of b4 a4, b takes c a3. There might be some plans here other than this pawn trade. It might be possible to torture the opponent with keeping the pawn on. I mean, playing d4 gave each of us like a space advantage. It was like plausible to try it, but I think it doesn't really. I think it's probably not quite good enough. Yeah, in this position here, I'm not sure what Sheppy wants to do, but I capture this pawn, and you know, here I can come here to d2 and draw. Or if you want to play d3, I get here before you have time to play knight a5. That's important. And then I just take on e4 here. So I never saw a clear win for black in this game. Either, in either of the games. So yeah, I'd be looking to try some more versions of this without d4. Just with maybe maneuvering the king to this side again, and then try to poke at this with the knight, or maybe play a5 and then poke at the queen side with the knight. Yeah. All right. So, you know, personally, thank you, Joshua, for helping me to practice that thing that I wanted to, and you know, for everybody in Twitch as well, because you helped us, you know, have our show by doing that. Appreciate that very much. And now let's get back to the analysis board. And paste our PGN back in. All right. We've got a massive swarm of variations here to see if black can get out of this. We actually found some chances for black in all of this, even though it was really difficult. I could spend even more time on this, but we've got like half an hour left, so I'm going to go to the critical move here for a moment. Okay, we've got a sense of the chances here. It's extremely difficult for black. There's some chances. Lots of tactics that can go wrong. Now let's come back here and have a look at the other moves. So the other moves are knight a5 or knight c5. Let's start with knight c5. We can try and compare it against that. Also note that the option I played with queen e4 allowed that endgame, right? So the options for white were either trying for like perpetual and attack with the queen and knight like he did, or to go into that endgame and try and defend that endgame with 2 pawns against 3, which as you guys saw, it's like it could be defendable as well. So now we're going to look at knight to c5 instead. So white plays queen b4. And here I can choose between knight e4 and queen e4. I could probably also like move my king to c7 or something and wait because he can't defend this. But let's just say I take it. Then I was worried about queen b6 in this position. So now my knight is tied to defending a6, and his queen's on my d6 pawn. From this position, I could play king d7, or queen d4, or queen d5. I think, right? 3 moves to defend this pawn. Let's just look at queen d4 first for a moment, okay? Now, at first, what I liked about this position was that my knight is keeping white's knight out. Leo, you're welcome to look at this in Stockfish if you want to, but I won't. I'm trying to learn about it, and if I don't put in the work, if I just look at the answers, I won't remember any of them. So, got to put in the work if I want to get better. So, what I was attracted to here is that my knight's kind of keeping his knight from getting like super active, and I'm willing to try and win this queen and pawn ending. If we get a knight trade, let's say, just off of my e-pawns, because I can bring my king into the middle of the e-pawns, have one in front of him racing and one blocking checks from behind. So I think I've got very good chances to win this queen endgame. But the move I was calculating during the game and that I rejected this based on was this move b4. And shorty, yeah, knight b3 is plausible even still because of the a6 pawn hanging. But let's have a look at this move first so I can confirm whether what I calculated was right or wrong. So at first, this move looks a little bit insane, allowing knight a4 with a strong attack, but the point is to take this pawn with check and then try and defend that attack. So knight a4, queen check. King here. You can't come here and allow queen b5 and taking this. Okay, now how did I think white was going to defend this? There's checkmate threatened here. How did I think white was going to defend this thing? don't even know. How did I think I could possibly defend this for white? I didn't think this worked. But now I'm not really seeing the point from white's perspective. How's white supposed to make this work? Like this move, for example, I think it straight up loses to d2. This might be what I overlooked. This might be like one of the variations where I had a critical miscalculation. Does this seem to lose to you guys? Can I get a reality check to help me out here? Does white have anything here after e4? Seems like it should lose, right? Yeah, I think white loses. What the heck? Why did I was so afraid of this like b4 move, you know, forcing. Wait, there's just queen c6 here. Okay, so this was in a different variation. This must have been the king d7 variation. So here on b4, right, here on b4, the knight can't go to a4. So the knight comes here, or to b7. And then here white's got a shot. Or maybe queen b5 check. No, that's a bad square to go to. Why would we try and go there? Queen b7 check. And I'm guessing white's okay. I mean, I'm not sure what move is next. But yeah, I think white's okay in this one. Okay, so then, you know, there's the option of knight to b7 defending this. And then white could take and check. Oh, check here. And get this position. I was afraid that this would be like actually a pretty annoying counterplay, but who knows? Maybe this is playable too. Okay, but let's go back and play king to d7 here over queen d4. So here the threat is queen to b7. And here's where on b4, knight a4, I analyzed queen a6 because the queen wasn't here. And then I looked at check and here, and I wasn't sure about this position. If queen here, queen here. Probably what we really need to be doing is just moving these e-pawns. And likewise, our opponent's just going to move his a-pawn. The a-pawn's faster. Now, insofar as this is a queen endgame, like how fast the pawn is more important than how many there are. So I actually have one little piece of knowledge or instinct to help me out here, which tells me that this position here is probably fine for white, except Shorty points out queen a3. Yeah, I just don't see these moves. I mean, instead of e4, queen a3. I mean, this queen and knight attack I've seen in the middle game, but somehow it just evades me here. All right, check, check. There's no way to defend that, right? The only hope would be perpetual check. And that's going to be pretty hard to achieve. Actually, we have these squares if black goes to these files, and these squares if black goes on these ranks. That is a perpetual, isn't it? Huh. Okay, so so I've got to play my e4 move. So I got to play e4. And then if we get to this position, now you could play queen a3, right? And now you would get your checkmate because this pawn is disrupting white's queen. And now there's no perpetual. All right. Hang on a second, everybody. I'll be right back.
Hey, dude.
Hey.
What's happening?
Just doing a chess broadcast.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no worries. Congratulations on your, again, for drawing a gem and beating an iron. That's like really good.
Yeah. It was fun. I'm going over one of my games.
No kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Which one is it?
The last round game. I'm really getting into that Queen and Knight. It's like I had no idea
what was happening.
What was happening?
You're spending a lot of time.
I was just calculating the amount of moves because I had no instincts, no basis, no feel.
Yeah.
Nothing.
You know,
I was looking at every move.
I was just looking at this book the other day. Well, actually this morning. How to open a chess game.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever seen that book?
Like the opening part of the game? Or
yeah, it's.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's marvelous, and it's about intuition.
Uh-huh.
And the only way and that's the problem with Brian. If he doesn't start playing more, he's not gonna. He's gonna be his own worst enemy. He's got to play a lot. The only way you get better. Huh?
He is definitely his own enemy, man.
Yeah, dude. Well, I'm the same way, but
yeah.
I know that you have to grit. You grit down. That's what Nick told me. Nick said the only reason John Grief didn't become a GM is he couldn't get down with the nitty gritty.
Mm-hmm.
Nitty gritty is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just you have to do it.
Yeah.
It's just you got to do it.
I've been playing it out for 2 hours.
Awesome. That's fucking awesome. That's the way to go.
Yeah.
That's the way to go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, if you want to study up sometime, I'm up for that.
Cool.
So just give me a jingle. You got my number.
I do, and I've got a phone now.
All right, man.
Take
See
care.
you later. Okay. I guess you're loaded for bear here, huh?
What's that?
You're.
Oh, this is
sure
how
that
it
you're
came.
not
We're renters here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You gotta buy, man.
Yeah, if only.
No, see ya.
See ya. Hello again. It is recovered. All right. Okay. So white actually needs to respect the potential of this mating attack, big time. Which means a move like Queen d4 or something would be in order here. I guess I could play that after a6, Queen a3. No, then it's too late. Queen d4. Yeah, Queen d4. It covers knight c3 and queen b2. Okay. So now the centralization. The centralization is big. And I'm sure I'm missing a million things here. Yep, I was about to play like d5, a7 and say that this doesn't work for black. You gotta try and remove the defender, right? I feel like in a middle game, these moves would be obvious to me, and somehow like I'm confused here. I'm just so confused. So now you gotta come here. You know, I still got no clue what I'm doing. What do you guys think? Is this 3 versus 2 winnable? Another night ending. Yeah, you're like, I had enough of this. Somebody help me. I got no clue. I got no clue if this is like a win or a draw. I'm going to guess it's a draw. And probably just leave it at that for this one. Man. Okay, so you guys are just starting to see what I was worried about here, right? With this line. Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't push the E pawns. I should hope that they survive and grab the A pawn. You're absolutely right. So you guys are starting to see what I was worried about with this line. Was that white would get this immediate counterplay with the queen here and going after the A pawn and force like some more pawn trades. That's what I was worried about with this particular line. So let's go knight A, queen here, queen b4, knight here, and now let's play this move e4 to cut off his lines. A6 here, 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 here. Let's do this one last time, and now let's bring our king out right away. And now white should either go like knight d2 or king b1 or maybe c4, threatening knight d2. c4, king here. But now I have time to play knight c5, and my king's covering the a pawn, and I'm winning. So c4 is too slow. So maybe a7 to force this knight here, then c4. Oh, this is too much by white. He's messed up now. You know, black comes here and here. Okay, so we got to do it with the king. The knight can't handle these pawns by himself. All right. So let's try bringing the king in. Maybe play a7, just to send the black knight somewhere bad, because the king's gonna have to come over and take the pawn anyway. So we might as well send the knight here instead of letting the knight come to like c3 or something. And the knight's stopping our king. So a7. Knight b6, and now let's bring the king and see what happens here. 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 Looks like black made it, huh? Collected the a pawn and lived to tell the tale of greed. Knight c5, trying to box out the king, right? The king has to come the long way, but he can still make it, right? Oh, you want to try this? And black wins, I think. So there's no knight e4. And if c4, knight c4 is always check, and the knight can come back and defend stuff. There's a shot here. There's a shot at winning this one. Oh, man. Okay, I need to check something else, though. The other thing I need to check is knight takes e4 here, not letting the white queen come in. So if I do that, then white gets to play knight b3, let's say, taking prime position for the knight. And now I'd checked that this endgame here was probably a draw. Why did I think that? Now it's looking like a win. Here, 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 here. Oh, C4, that's why. Yeah, that's why. C4. I remember checking this. I'm thinking it was a draw. But wait, why is that a draw? I was wrong. This is a win. Is it a win? Hang on. Oops. Okay, hang on. Here. Okay, we got to take more space. E4. All right, white's only chance is some. No, this will never work though. Yeah, I think this is winning. Even with the B3 reserve tempo, I think white's eventually going to lose, right? Like the king gets backed up at some point, right? And then black comes here. You can play B3 all you want, right? Like he just comes in. And he's always got lots of reserve tempo with the E pawn. The key is just you have to have time to play E4 and get your king up to E5 behind it. If you get stuck with your pawn on E5 and white getting king to E4, then it's not good. Even then, I wonder if you could win that without one E pawn. Okay, so I miscalculated that. I could definitely go for this. That's a big deal that I miscalculated that king and pawn ending, because I thought I couldn't play here. And now I see that I could have. I could come like this, and I'm attacking this pawn and covering everything. And, you know, if you play something like this, I'm very confident I have the technique to win this endgame. B3, king f5, b4. Okay, I'm like sure I can win this endgame. I know this. I guess it's knight endgames that I'm the worst at. I mean, I'm pretty bad at queen endings, but like once we get into the queen endings, I know some of them. The knight endings, I don't know anything. Just nothing. Okay, so I can totally play knight c5 here. And then, you know, if he wants to like give space, I can play e4. Oh, he's coming here. Maybe I should shut him down, right? Shut him down. Keep that knight away. Oh, I got in anyway. Ah, freaking knights. I can't keep the knights away. But this is definitely better than what I played in the game. I mean, we can see that for sure. We can see this is definitely better than what I did in the game. I mean, my position's solid. My e-pawn's rolling. He hasn't like, yeah, this is much better. You know, and maybe the knight's not even that great here. Maybe I shouldn't move my knight. I've got other improving moves I can make. I can play king c7. I can play knight f6 and e4. Yeah. All right. We solved the critical position, and just in time. I only had another minute or two before I have to get on with things. Wow. So in this position, the answer was probably knight c5, queen b4, and now not taking with the queen, but playing knight e4. And then, yeah, and then playing this endgame out. There's not really counterplay for white. There's not an attack against my king, and I've got time to maybe use my e-pawn. I mean, I'm not saying it's like, it's not necessarily a win. It's just an extra pawn, but it's an extra passed pawn. And this is as good as it's going to get. Like, it's better than all the other things we've looked at. You know, I thought it might take 3 hours looking at this to figure it out. But all it took was noticing that was noticing that, for example, I can play this king and pawn ending as a win, so I can bring my knight back to c5 if I want to. And just looking at this position, I can see it's better than I realized. Cool. Cool. These do not count as connected passed pawns, no. They're doubled passed pawns. The e5 pawn counts as a protected passed pawn because there's the d pawn to escort it. Each of these counts as a protected passed pawn, but they're not connected passed pawns because this one's not a passer. So you've got two doubled pawns, two passed doubled pawns, and they're protected passed doubled pawns. Either one can be supported, but they're not connected. All right. So, and I mean, I really didn't think that we would solve this critical question today, but I think we did. Yeah, I think we ground our way to a conclusion. And earlier than expected. I thought this was going to be like a 10-hour grind. Now, if I want to get good at playing these positions, like I figured out which is the best way to go, but to get good at playing these positions, to be able to convert them, to be able to play them a little bit faster, it's still like dozens of hours of work to do this. Like this position here is another one that I would play out, like the knight and pawn ending that I did with Joshua earlier in the show, right? Knight in 3 versus knight in 2. That one, I should be able to get it down if I practice it for a couple hours. This one could take me just like days, but it's another thing where I would want to like, even if you don't get it fully down, it may take like a few passes at this before you get good at it. You may have to revisit this kind of thing a couple times in your life, but try it a couple times. At least you get better at it than I was going into it. And yeah, then maybe like do it again some other time. But at least play this out a couple times. Could be good for me. So, the work's not done, but our time here is, unfortunately. So, I was wondering about that too, Sheppy. Actually, that's a very interesting idea. If you can go for the queen here and then into c1. I think that queen d5 kind of centralizing is actually pointless because white wants to put the knight here and then play b3. So this, I don't think helps you. It just means your queen's no longer covering these squares. But the question of whether you could come into c1 and harass white here is an interesting one. Yeah. So, yeah, that's rough, Ebola. Sorry about that. By the way, I wanted to let you guys know about the upcoming streams, which you can also always check the schedule below the video. It shows the schedule, or you can follow me on Twitter. I announce my streams on there. But the next one is going to be the same time as this on Thursday, so 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific. And also tomorrow evening, I'm doing the Pro Chess League Week 7 broadcast, which will be from about 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. Pacific, plus or minus 15 minutes or so. And Wesley So will be playing. So tomorrow we'll be watching Wesley So and Mamad Yarov. And Mamad Yarov is at this Grand Prix tournament for the World Championship, and he's still going to be playing for the Hackers tomorrow against St. Louis, I think. So that should be like quite a showdown between those two players. With first place in the Pacific Division is on the line. Tomorrow's the last week of the regular season, so whoever the top 2 teams in the division will get like first round buys in the playoffs, and a 1-round bye is pretty nice. So that'll be on the line tomorrow, and there'll be some big lineups coming out to fight for that. And yeah, that's what I got. For all of you who made it through this broadcast, I know this was like quite a grind for you guys. Not our normal Not our normal fare. It was fun for me. And, you know, just props to any of you who put in the work with me. And you know, that's the way to the top. There's no shortcuts. You just gotta grind and grind till you get better. All right. Peace. Take care, everybody.